I want to bring up two people now, actually, in a different, very different business in the book space. Julie Blattberg, who is Senior Vice President of Transformation at HarperCollins, and Linda Holliday, CEO of Citia. So come on out, guys. Nice to see you, Julie. Nice to see you. So Julie, Linda, thanks for joining us. So before we begin, because Citia is new and it's you know, new, why don't we show a quick video, and that way people will be able to get it, okay?
It's the shortest video in the history of our company.
I think it's a minute and a half, so
125,000 word book in 1 minute, roughly. So we show the kind of blurb promotion, we deconstruct the book and reconstruct it on an idea first axis in a visual index so that you can see the book, go where you want to go. It's what you see is what you get. You can start anywhere. You can move it around like Google Maps and choose any live content area. If you started at the beginning, you would just start reading this card-based system. So each card can have video, audio, text. There's a back to every card that shows who made it, where it comes from. You can conduct commerce on the back. This one took you to Amazon. Flip the card back over. Now you can play video. You don't have audio. And as you may have suspected, every card is a social element. So you can literally tweet or email or Facebook the whole book one card at a time. You go to Twitter, you retrieve the card, the recipient retrieves the card. They have rights to a certain sample that's predetermined, maybe one deck. And after that, they're asked to buy the content. So it's a way of modularizing the book and putting it into the slipstream where we think all of these important ideas need to be.
Great.
Ta-da.
Okay. Let's start, Julie. You know, it seems to me that books have always been sort of inherently social. You come from a very, I don't know how old HarperCollins is, but
almost 200 years.
I think that has pretty much everybody beat here. You know, we recommend them to friends. We have book clubs, whatnot. So how does that, for HarperCollins, how does that meet the social web? I mean, are people, well, let me just ask it that way, that simply.
Well, it's interesting because the idea of reading a book is inherently not social.
Right.
You are alone with your book or your tablet or your phone, and you're having a reading experience, but everything else around books is very social. Some survey data that I came across this morning suggested that 2 years ago, the #1 way that people would discover new books, what to read next, was walking into a physical store. 2 years later, May of 2012, the #1 way that people discover what to read next is word of mouth. It's a personal recommendation. Some of that is happening in social, some of it's face-to-face, but it's more important than ever that HarperCollins and all book publishers, legacy and new, are participating in the social stream in different ways to enhance book discovery.
So what does that mean to you, Linda? When you talk about making books social, what do you mean?
Well, this wasn't planned, but our next book is actually one of their books. We're publishing Dan Ariely's
really?
Predictably Irrational in November. So we're taking this fabulous best-selling book and extracting all the big ideas from it and reorganizing it and putting it into the marketplace as a paid book app. And from the back of all those cards, you can buy the full text, the ebook, or you can buy the app. So we're helping take this kind of massive IP that's really valuable and expose it to new audiences who have different time constraints and different tastes and different ways of discovering things.
Right. So can you explain that a little bit in terms of what that actually means to the product side?
In terms of making the thing we make?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds expensive. What's the process that you go through to make a book like this?
It's another layer of production on top of an elaborate layer of production. And one of my beliefs is that when you have glut and information overload, the way you break through that is by making things even better. We have a massive amount of okay stuff, but we don't have a lot of great stuff. So how do you take really great thinking and optimize it for our flow and optimize it for our sharing? And it does require another layer of editorial that understands that kind of content and that kind of audience. And we art direct it again too, because in order to make these objects more viral, they need to have some personality. So we have an editorial process that's pretty well designed. We have some IT that helps us with content extraction so that that process can be pretty fast. But there's definitely another layer of people thinking about how to make this content really fit.
And where do you envision these books? Would they be bought? Would they be advertiser support? I mean, what's the business model underneath of them?
These are either paid apps or they're free apps that ask you to purchase a larger paid app. And it's a mostly HTML5 system, so if you buy this on the iPad for now, you will also have access to the same product on the web. And then all these content objects also move through all the social networks. So you buy it once and you have it everywhere, and you can buy it anywhere.
So how's this transformation affecting what you do at HarperCollins? You know, and what'll be different 12 months from now as you look forward?
Well, one thing that's changing is being more innovative on the product side, partnering with the right companies, creating things in-house. But as far as really transforming a 200-year-old company to a 21st century powerhouse, it's a lot of internal work that needs to happen, cleaning up your data, your metadata, your processes, your systems. A lot of education needs to happen around, it's not just tweeting and getting a lot of Facebook likes, but how are we monetizing that? And let's train people in best practices, and also bringing in new talent from other industries, maybe people who have other experiences and how to capitalize on data and technology.
Do you envision that maybe like a new kind of author will emerge, somebody who's kind of cross-platform in a way, in the same way that new forms of journalism have emerged, new kinds of journalists?
Well, there's new kinds of storytelling.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Clearly.
So authors would build new muscles, presumably, to do that.
There are still many genres in books, and there's fiction where you sit down with a storyteller and give yourself over to a very immersive fantasy. The books we're focusing on right now are more serious nonfiction, where both the author and the audience are a little more goal-oriented. I want to acquire all the information that's in that book and not necessarily spend as much time on it or care about every word. I may end up loving it and also want to do that, but there's a certain amount of efficiency that a lot of genres are promising and readers are looking for.
So one of the things that was interesting about our email exchange is that, you know, you mentioned a kind of truncating of the attention span. I sort of translated that into a kind of mass ADD, you know, where people just don't have the focus anymore. I mean, is that happening, or is that,
No, I think there is some of that, and I suffer from it, and I admit as a big book person, I'm reading fewer books, and I intend to get back to that, and I don't know if that will be true. But I think one of the things that we're all doing is we're trying to triage what we do read, so we skim. And young people especially, they want to know before they spend time on something that it's worth it. They don't want to find out after the fact that it wasn't worth it. So we all have to make things that are much more visible and triageable, because that's a very human response to too much stuff to read.
But does the interactivity also help with that in some ways? I mean, given that people are so interested in interacting with devices, it seems to me that when you begin to mix media types like you're talking about, it's much less linear. It's much more back and forth.
And personal. So you can choose the piece that's most interesting to you and enter a corpus that way, and maybe discover that you like it more than if you had started at the beginning. I think another important factor in increasing attention span is the tactileness. Like, paper books feel good, and there's a physicalness, and there's geospatial cues. Ebooks, not so. But the kind of thing we're trying to make, there's still what we call clicks then. You know, that there's a satisfaction of moving through the content, navigating. And whether this is good or bad, I think a lot of us have gotten used to operating content like that. We want to, I say the internet's made us all men. I want to drive. I want to drive the content and go to the piece I need and move on from there.
Yeah.
That's sort of a new level of engaging with the content when you're physically moving through a nonlinear story.
So Julie, how has this changed the culture? Is it changing the culture at HarperCollins? I mean, it seems like, you know, a thematic part of this conference has been, you know, moving from one kind of culture to another, breaking down silos. What's the cultural shift that's required to get this to be, actually get it done?
I've definitely seen a shift in the last year or so that I've been active in social media on the corporate level for HarperCollins, where when there is something really great happening and we want to broadcast it, we coordinate a lot better internally. A lot more people senior in the organization are curious and aware and are saying, oh, well, what are we doing about this on Facebook? Has this been tweeted? What's our strategy? And that's awesome. It wasn't always that way. People are like, okay, yeah, the interns get to tweet and whatnot. People are taking it a lot more seriously, and it's part of every marketing plan. We're working a lot more closely with authors also as a segment, giving the training, letting them know what to expect, best practices, things like that. It's part of our everyday, where a year or two ago, not so much.
What about mobile? I mean, is that changing as well, the thinking that's going on in the company?
It is. We're definitely experimenting a lot with our teen and tween audience that are using devices more than they are anything else, basically. We're sort of watching as the numbers grow, kind of slowly but significantly, and experimentation.
Yeah, that's interesting. So how do you see, will you be a publisher, or are you going to be always working with the mainstream publishers? What is your business model as you get this company up and running? It sounds like you're working with, at least in this one instance, HarperCollins. Are you publishing your own titles, though, as well?
We're not right now, and our intent is to be a platform underneath publishers. We're working with the publishers and the authors because we're making something new and everybody has to help. But we've built a CMS system that powers the process right now, and our intent is to make that easy enough to use that the publishers take it in-house and build it into their workflow. And in some cases, the authors work directly into that CMS as well. We'll continue to do R&D. We'll have a studio that innovates animations and you know, views for the content, but we hope to open that up to creators, and not just books, but in music. And we have some pilots we're running now with the entertainment industry and non-book publishers and even some retailers.
Can you see it going to magazines?
Yeah, sure. You know, the magazines have a tremendous amount of evergreen archival content that they haven't had much market for in the past. A lot of people save magazines because they love a column like, you know, real simple, how to do something new with something old, and they sit there in somebody's basement and they don't really get re-access because it's another form problem. Just like we discovered we loved having books on us all the time, and people are reading more books because the thing in their bag has books on it. Right. Magazines can have a lifespan beyond a month, because you can actually find the things that you're most interested in again. So we're working with publishers to try and find those kinds of assets that have a second, third, and maybe fifth life in them. Mm.
So you came up on the editorial side, right?
That's right. I was a managing editor for many years before making the leap over to digital at the right time.
So do you think there's a new kind of editor emerging? Is that part of this whole change?
Yes, when it comes to different kinds of storytelling, but editors are editors. They need to be able to find a beautiful story and say, this is something worth publishing, work with a writer and craft it and make it a really great book. But editors also need to learn new skills, like how to write copy that's SEO friendly and understand keywords and tags and concepts like that. So I think it's sort of adding on to a knowledge base, but an editor is still an editor.
Yeah. So would you have a training program inside for that, or is that?
We do.
And do you think this is happening across the book business, or are you guys pretty much, you think you're leading that change? Or
I'd like to think that we're leading it, but I think a lot of the big 6 publishers, some of the independents as well, they all know this is the time and you have to move over.
Right. I mean, it seems like the book business, you know, it's a very conservative business for the most part, and it's now changing as a result. How does Amazon? How do you guys react to Amazon as a platform? Not just as a bookseller, but has the Kindle family of products helped, hurt? What do you think about that? And is that part of your development thinking? You know, those platforms, or is it all basically PC based?
Well, certainly Amazon plays a role in the transaction business, and they've moved into
the transaction business clearly.
And they've moved into book rentals, and they are present in pretty much every part of the book industry, but we don't interact with them that much. It's the domain of the publishers. But if I were a publisher, I would want a lot more data, for example, than I get. It doesn't seem like a very kind
equitable,
of virtuous partnership, because there ought to be more feedback in terms of what works when people abandon books. This is really important information for publishers to have if they're going to get better at servicing, you know, readers among all these forms. And it's a little bit of a dark garden.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, I'm a great lover of books. I really look forward to seeing what you guys create over time. So thanks a lot for helping.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
It's great.